There is a way in which whatever goes wrong in this campaign, Donald Trump always seems to land on his feet. In order to understand that phenomenon, we have asked to join us here tonight Tony Schwartz. When Donald Trump wrote his 1987 memoir, The Art of the Deal, Tony Schwartz was listed on the cover, lower right-hand side there, not as the ghostwriter, but as the co-writer. He says, in fact, he just wrote the book for Donald Trump, and in order to do so, he spent quite a lot of time with Mr. Trump. He's made news this week in The New Yorker for saying that if he were able to write the book again, he would call it The Sociopath. He says he regrets his role in shaping a narrative about Donald Trump that is so positive, and now Donald Trump has sent him a cease and desist letter asking for all the royalties back from that book. Tony Schwartz, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
What should we understand? What did you come to understand about Donald Trump in terms of living by his instincts, turning bad situations into good situations?
Well, let me start with this. It's really disturbing to me to watch this discussion about whether he's going to put on a good show tonight. The real issue about Donald Trump is Donald Trump. What is his character? He has the attention span and the knowledge base of a 9-year-old with ADHD. And I'm not saying that to be funny. I'm saying that soberly and with great fear. He doesn't know very much. He doesn't think in any complex ways, and he can't pay attention. Would you want a surgeon to cut into your brain without training to be a surgeon? It's a frightening prospect.
But how does somebody with the kinds of limitations that you're describing beat 17 other very accomplished, well-qualified professional politicians, win the Republican nomination going away, and is now going to be on this stage tonight?
By instinctively appealing to the amygdala of the brain rather than to the prefrontal cortex, by rousing up people's emotions, as I'm sure he will do tonight, so that it overwhelms their capacity to look at a person rationally. Any rational person who understands who this man is would not vote for him, period. Why not? Because he's not qualified for the job. Put aside ideology. It isn't clear that he has an ideology anyway. So the whole issue to me is, what is this man's character, and is it reasonable to have him as president of the United States?
I think that is one very, very important conversation. The other very important conversation is, how did he get this far, if that is true? And you're talking about having a specific kind of emotional appeal, about having an instinctive understanding of how to mount that appeal. But honestly, what we're expecting tonight from his speech is a pretty workmanlike Republican speech, which puts a pretty mainstream cast on some of the more extreme policies that he's proposed.
And
it's not an emotional thing.
No, here's what I would say about that speech. Ignore it. Ignore it. This man has told us already that he has not changed from who he was when he was 7 years old. So what's the difference if he gets on TV and reads a speech that was written by someone else off of a teleprompter? It has no bearing on who he is.
But if that's what he's going to have to do from here on out, right? He's going to have to go to the debates. He's going to have to give this speech tonight. He's going to have to continue to campaign for president. And if he becomes president, he's going to have to do president and stuff, including giving speeches on topics that he, to your point, may or may not understand. The question is whether or not the limitations that you're describing preclude him from ascending to the job itself. And I don't think the American public has decided that's true.
I don't think the verdict is in, and I wouldn't be here talking to you if I thought the verdict was in. I'm here because I'm trying to raise the warning. He's successfully muzzled every single person, so far as I know, but me, who knows him really well over the past 25 years, by getting them to sign severe non-disclosures. He started with me before there was that in his head. I'm able to go out and do this, and I need to do it so that before this happens, we can be saved from somebody who is going to...
He is still capable of the grand notion, however, correct? Meaning, make America great again. America first, maybe he didn't know the Lindbergh-related modern history of that phrase, what it came to mean in the modern era of American history. But things like make America first, things like NATO will help you if you're paid up, if we're good with your financials.
Let's face it, he's a good salesman. I mean, that's the #1 thing he does. And it was interesting that you were saying earlier that that Ted Cruz likes being a villain. Donald Trump likes being a villain. Donald Trump has said, any publicity is good publicity. His deepest need This is what I experienced being with him. His deepest need is to be noticed in every moment. Noticed good, noticed bad, it doesn't matter. Notice me, notice me, notice me. That's where his attention is in an incredibly complex world. We don't want the President of the United States to be thinking all the time about how to get attention. That's what he does.
Is it true that he chose you to write The Art of the Deal after you wrote an incredibly negative journalistic profile?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked me. That's a perfect example of that. I wrote a piece about how he was trying to harass tenants in a rent-control building out of the building so he could convert it into a luxury condominium. We put that piece on the cover of New York Magazine. The picture was an illustration of him looking like a thug. He was sweating. It was unshaven. He loved it. He loved it. He wrote me a fan letter. He put it up on his wall. How does that make sense?
Because he was on the cover.
Exactly. And at that point, he hadn't been on that many covers, but it's still critically important to him.
So it's the old press agent's adage, as long as you spell my name right.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, he's done a great job. He is a bully. That's the point. He's a bully. And what he does is he substitutes for knowledge intensity. He keeps saying it and saying it and saying it in a small number of words in a society that builds itself around sound bites. It works. It's scary to think that, but it's true.
As they were wrapping up the New York Times interview, they put out their transcript today. Here was the question for Donald Trump. What do you think people will take away from this convention? What are you hoping? Answer, the fact that I'm very well liked.
Yeah. And by the way, second best would be I'm not very well liked, but you noticed me.
Wow.
Tony Schwartz, the co-author of Art of the Deal, now embroiled in conflict with the man with whom you co-wrote this book. The cease and desist letter, trying to get all the royalties back and everything. Do you have any legal fear in terms of him coming after you?
You know what? I mean, I always knew it was going to happen, and my feeling is there's something much more at stake here than whether or not he sues me and whether or not I win or lose a suit.
Tony Schwartz, thanks for being with us.